Greetings and welcome to Cybersecurity Today. I'm your host, Jim Wiggins. If this is your first time tuning into our program, allow me a few moments to introduce what we're all about. So what exactly is Cybersecurity Today? Well, it's a show designed to explore the realm of computer security in an exciting and thoughtful way. Cybersecurity Today is a half-hour news broadcast utilizing a talk show format to break down the themes, topics, and current events in the cybersecurity industry. Our mission with this program is to dispel the murkiness and complexity often associated with the cybersecurity sector. For our viewers who are already active professionals in the field, this show will deliver a pulse on the current state of affairs. We feature a variety of esteemed guests to delve into topics that are important to those in the cybersecurity space. Our objective is to offer information to a diverse audience, from beginners to experts and everyone in between. You're sure to gain fresh insights from today's show. All right, let's set the stage and discuss the structure of the show. This will help you understand what's in store. Today's show is divided into two parts. Our first segment, known as Cyber Bites, covers several current events unfolding today in the cybersecurity sector. Some of these stories might be familiar, while others may be entirely new to you. Then, in our second segment, we're joined by Ms. Marcelle Lee, a Principal Information Security Engineer, for a deep dive into the world of cyber threat intelligence. She shares expert perspectives on threat actor tactics, proactive defense strategies, campaign tracking, and the future of research in the cybersecurity landscape. Okay, let's get into the Cyber Bites segment and talk about what's going on today in the cybersecurity industry. In current news, Verizon's 2025 Data Breach Investigations Report reveals a significant increase in cyber attacks, with third-party involvement in breaches doubling to 30%. The report also notes a 34% surge in the exploitation of vulnerabilities, emphasizing the growing threat landscape for businesses globally. Credential abuse and exploitation of vulnerabilities remain leading initial attack vectors. The findings highlight the critical need for enhanced security measures, including strong password policies, timely patching, and comprehensive employee training. In other news, global payment provider Adyen confirmed a major distributed denial of service attack, or DDoS, on April 21, 2025 that disrupted payment services across Europe. The attack involved multiple waves of high-volume traffic targeting Adyen's European data centers, causing intermittent outages for both e-commerce and in-person payment services. Adyen has implemented mitigation measures and is working to strengthen its defenses against future attacks. This incident highlights the vulnerability of payment systems to DDoS attacks and the need for robust cybersecurity strategies. In other news, PowerSchool, an educational technology platform, experienced a data breach affecting multiple school districts in North Carolina. Hackers are now contacting school officials demanding Bitcoin payments to prevent the release of sensitive student and staff data. The breach has prompted some districts to consider switching to alternative platforms due to security concerns. Law enforcement agencies in the US and Canada are investigating the ongoing extortion attempts. Those are some of the top headlines shaping the cybersecurity landscape. We're taking a quick break, but when we return, Ms. Marcelle Lee, a Principal Information Security Engineer, will join us to explore the evolving field of cyber threat intelligence.
VA's round-the-clock hotline can put veterans who are homeless in touch with the resources and support they earned through their military service. Call 877-424-3838.
Welcome back to Cybersecurity Today. Now we're honored to host Ms. Marcelle Lee, an Information Security Engineer, where she has led cyber threat research at teams at some of the world's largest digital infrastructure companies. With over a decade of cybersecurity experience, Marcelle has specialized in cyber threat analysis, threat hunting, malware analysis, and intrusion detection across both private and federal sectors. She's also a passionate educator and advocate for diversity in the cybersecurity community, serving as an adjunct faculty member at the University of Maryland and a longtime board member of the Women's Society of Cyberjitsu. Today, she joins us to explore the topic Inside the Mind of a Threat Researcher, Advancing Cyber Intelligence, where we'll delve into threat actor tactics, campaign tracking, collaboration, and maybe even the future of cyber threat research. Marcelle, welcome to the show.
Jim, thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here. Thanks for that excellent intro.
Absolutely, we're super excited to have you. I thought maybe what we could do, since we've got a pretty diverse audience, some people might not have ever heard about cyber threat intelligence. Can we start kind of maybe defining what it is and how it might differ from other types of cybersecurity that people might be aware of, like maybe incident response or vulnerability management?
Yeah, for sure. And I do feel like cyber threat intelligence is kind of like a domain that's not that well known in the field. But basically, it's all about gathering information about cyber threats, as the name implies. And you do this so you can protect your organization from, whatever possible threat is coming down the pike in your direction. But it helps organizations assess risk and evaluate what kind of security controls they need. So it's huge and it's really important. One quick thing I'll say here in terms of different roles is there's something called the MITRE ATT&CK framework. Sorry, not the MITRE ATT&CK framework, the NICE cybersecurity workforce framework, and it goes into all the different roles. And I'll talk about that a little bit more as we move along in this interview.
Awesome. So you kind of defined what cyber threat intelligence represents. Can you spend a moment and talk about like sources of threat intelligence?
Yeah.
What are the ones that are considered maybe more valuable than others, and how do you like assess reliability of the different types?
Yeah, no, it's such a great question because sometimes you'll just get intel and it could be just like a list of IP addresses and you're like, what's the context? What is this for? Where did it come from? What does it mean? And, that's not very useful, but there are certainly sources that are better than others. And one I would say for sure is if you work in an environment where there's like an incident response practice, you'll be getting real world information about things that are happening to basically your customers. There's nothing better than that, like that actual like right to down to the wire kind of info coming through. If you don't have that, not everybody does, of course. There's also OSINT, open source intelligence. You can get lessons learned from like breaches that happen or, different kinds of attacks and assess, for your organization, would that potentially be impactful? Yeah.
Awesome. So I know that like in the cyber threat intelligence world, there's an acronym that you sometimes read about, it's TTP, which talks about tactics, techniques, and even procedures. I was wondering,
yeah.
Can you maybe kind of explain what that represents and what its context is within threat intelligence?
Yes, for sure. So, threat actors have a methodology. They go about their business a certain way, just like really any organization does. And this type of threat actor activity, and this is where MITRE ATT&CK framework comes in. I'm getting my frameworks all mixed up, but MITRE ATT&CK framework comes into play here because they have done like an amazing job of breaking down these tactics, techniques, and procedures. The procedures part's kind of not as much, but more the tactics and the techniques. So a tactic might be, for example, initial access. So how does a threat actor get into your environment in the first place? And then the techniques are the ways that they do that. So it provides this amazing framework for cyber researchers and really everybody else working in the field to categorize the activity that they're seeing and I always say, like, if you're not using that in like maybe your public facing blogs or whatever, you definitely should be, because it's so helpful for community members to see, what is the way this person got in, or how did they use PowerShell or whatever, right? So super useful.
Understood. So can we build on that and talk a little bit about how an organization might use these TTPs to ultimately maybe defend against cyber threats and different types of cyber adversaries that are out there?
Yes. So, I mean, think about it in terms of a continuum, right? So, if a threat actor is wanting to get into your environment, they're going to start out by doing some reconnaissance on the organization and just looking at from like, what are you sharing on the internet? What are you sharing on your website? What is out there that a threat actor could use to potentially form a picture of your environment? Um, so that's like a huge thing, and it's a lens that everybody should be looking through. I actually do a workshop sometimes. It's like called Red Team, Blue Team, and we step through this process of, how do threat actors get in, and on the flip side, what did the company or the organization do that maybe allowed that? So yeah, so you definitely want to kind of look at the different steps in this process and uh, and see how it's relevant to your organization.
Understood, understood. So there's a term that I read about within the cyber threat intelligence space, and it's called cyber campaign tracking. Can
Yeah.
you kind of maybe explain what that represents and how that's used by organizations, or maybe just in generally from a research perspective?
Yeah, so cyber threat campaigns could be lots of different things, right? One thing I like to use as an example here is phishing campaigns. So everybody knows what a phishing email is, right? We've all gotten them. And these days you'll also have gotten a phishing SMS message, or maybe a phishing message, which is a phone call. Um, so there's different levels of these kind of campaigns. There might be a campaign that's just what we would call maybe spray and pray, where it's like the SMS toll messages, which I don't know anybody who hasn't gotten one of those, right? You get a message on your phone saying you didn't pay your toll. You got to click on this link, and just saying, don't do that. It's not legit. But yeah, but you could also have a campaign where it's, a very advanced threat actor that is trying very hard to get into your environment, and they're targeting specific people, like maybe they've identified who is an admin in your organization or whatever, and make a very targeted email to them or other like people in the organization that is specifically being used to get access. So it's a huge difference, right? And organizations get tons and tons of these kinds of emails. The ones that you care about are the ones that are targeted. The ones that are just like everybody gets are less interesting or relevant, right?
So are the campaigns then being used by the adversaries, or are they being used by the organizations to track the adversaries?
Oh no, they're being used by the adversaries for sure. So say, for example, I wanted to hack into XYZ company. I would do some research about that organization. I would find targets of interest within that organization, and I would craft a campaign to basically target those people. So maybe there's some website that I know everybody who works at that organization goes to. I could craft a phishing email that would be like, oh, here, go to this website and log in or whatever, right? I mean, the possibilities are endless. But yeah, so the campaigns are definitely on the threat actor side and not the company side.
Understood, understood. So I know that one of the challenges that we run into is attribution. Of course, attribution is where we're able to link back activities to specific sources. It can be somewhat of a controversial topic. I'm wondering, any guidance on how you would approach identifying threat actors with trying to
Yeah.
prevent misattributing, people unnecessarily, or organizations, or countries for that matter?
Yeah, so the first thing I will say is that attribution is incredibly difficult, right? And really, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter that much. Um, Especially in the realm of like cybercrime. Cybercrime is very opportunistic. So they'll just go after whoever they can get into to try to get basically money. That's what their motivation is. If you have like an APT, an advanced persistent threat, say from China or Russia, or Iran, or North Korea, those are like the primary ones that we care about. If they are targeting you, then that might be more useful information. But at the end of the day, what's the most important thing is um, being able to defend yourself against any kind of threat activity that's going to happen, and understanding that it threat actors typically go after the low hanging fruit. Keep your house in order, and you might be somewhat okay. But if a state sponsored threat group is after you, it really doesn't matter what you do. And really, yeah, it's the motivation that might make a difference there, but not really. So I'm going to say it's hard and not super relevant. Like if you're in the middle of an attack, you don't really care who did it. You just want to deal with it.
Understood. Understood. So let's kind of build on some of this information we're talking about. And I know one of the terms that's kind of been coined over the last number of years is this idea of what's called threat hunting.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about what that represents and how that might kind of differentiate from the more traditional approaches when we think about things like incident response?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, incident response is, as the name implies, it's reactive. It's what you do after an incident happens, where threat hunting is what you do to try to prevent an incident from happening by basically being informed about different threats and looking within your environment to see, do I have any of these indicators here? And when I say indicators, it could be like literal indicators of compromise, like maybe an IP address or a domain or a hash or whatever, or it could be more behavioral based, which truly is more relevant. The other kind, the first kind, they get stale really fast and aren't really necessarily that useful in the long term. But behavioral kind of things like this threat actor does this sort of thing with PowerShell, you can hunt in your environment to see if you see any of that kind of activity. Um, Also, on the flip side, if you know a threat actor is using maybe some kind of tool that is within like most normal corporate environments, say like AnyDesk or something like that, a remote monitoring management tool, and you have some examples of that, you could look into your environment and be like, hey, first of all, do we have AnyDesk? Second of all, if we have it, who's using it? And is this usage normal? So it's really about like kind of following a trail of breadcrumbs and figuring out if there's any hits in your environment.
Understood. Understood. So I know, one of the other areas that I wanted to talk to you a little bit about was malware analysis, right? So that kind of dovetails, I think, to some extent with what you were kind of alluding to, because undoubtedly you're going to run into, bad software. Can you talk about really what the malware analysis does for an organization and how it might differentiate between like intrusion analysis?
Yeah, so I will say for most organizations, like if you get malware in your system, I think your main priority is just getting rid of it. You might analyze it, but really the people who are doing more in-depth malware analysis are probably like government agencies and that sort of thing. Um, However, it can be very interesting in terms of, looking at malware, you could identify like maybe some common strings that you could then use to search for the same malware out there in the world using something called Yara, um, which is basically just a way to sort of search for strings and behaviors and whatnot. But anyway, but that's less important, I think, than the intrusion analysis part. And there's something that we call IAVs, initial access vectors. And really, there's three primary initial access vectors for how threat actors get into an organization. And one is credential abuse, and there's a lot of different things that come under the umbrella of credential abuse. Vulnerability exploitation, for sure, is another big one. And also, I think social engineering, like phishing, just never gets old. It works, and threat actors keep using it. And I will say that threat actors are also using artificial intelligence to enhance all of those three things. So, yeah.
Understood, understood. Let's shift gears now. Let's talk a little bit about collaboration and information sharing. I'm wondering, what role does information sharing play in effective cyber threat intelligence, and what are some of the formal and informal channels that organizations might use to facilitate that information sharing?
Yeah, information sharing is huge. I mean, no organization is an island, right? I mean, you see what you see through the lens of your company, but what are other companies seeing, and maybe within your sector or whatever. So I really love the ISACs, and ISACs are information sharing and collaboration centers, and they're typically based on some kind of industry sector. So, for example, there's real estate ISAC, there's financial services ISAC, there's IT ISAC. So these different ISACs, that's their whole purpose, is to share information that's relevant to people within that industry. So that's great. I mean, you'll get tips that you wouldn't see otherwise. So, for example, like maybe you could be in an ISAC meeting and somebody would share information about like a phishing campaign that they observed or some malware they observed, and it'll give you enough information so you can go hunt in your environment to see if that sort of thing has happened there as well. And otherwise, you wouldn't have gotten those details most likely. And then there's also, I mean, threat intel feeds. That's back to sort of that list of IP addresses that may or may not be relevant. If I didn't say the word context before, I'll say the word context now, because that context is everything when you're talking threat intelligence.
Understood, understood. So let's assume that you're talking to somebody who wants to get into cyber threat intelligence. What kind of cyber threat education do you think is important today, and what are some of the key maybe skills that career professionals should maybe focus on? If they want to become the next Marcelle Lee, how would they go about doing that, I guess?
Yeah, so I mean, I think really one of the big parts of it is having sort of a natural curiosity about things. You want to pull threads, you want to unravel a campaign. You're not just going to like look at one piece of data and be like, oh, okay, that's that. You want to know the whole picture, what's involved with that. And that's something, going back to the malware analysis thing, it's like, yes, you can analyze a piece of malware, but do you have any idea, like, how did it get into the environment? What were some other things that were happening when that malware was delivered? And, there's a whole picture. And loving kind of like the storytelling aspect of it, and just wanting to dive deep into the details is definitely an important thing when you're trying to do this work. Not everybody has that, right? But I would definitely say that natural curiosity and wanting to pull the threads is huge.
Understood, understood. Let's talk for a moment about like diversity and its impact on threat research. From your perspective, why is diversity, especially gender diversity, so important in cybersecurity and threat research? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously, with my role with Cyber Jitsu, I certainly have lots of thoughts, but diversity in general is just super important. And there's been so many different studies, from Harvard and so many other places, that a diverse team leads to better decision making and ultimately leads to, better profits for organizations. And I've seen it myself. I mean, if you have a room full of people who all look the same as each other and think the same as each other, they're not going to come to maybe conclusions that could happen if you had more diversity. And so, I mean, it's definitely not just gender, Jim. It's across the board. Neurodiversity, racial diversity, everything. If I was going to build a team, I would want to see like a rainbow of people, basically, because it really makes a difference, and it also enriches your own experience as a human being. Being able to interact with people who aren't maybe exactly like you or very similar to you.
Understood. Two questions. Try to get them within the next minute if we could.
Yeah.
The one I want to ask you about is the future, right? So what are some of the biggest changes or emerging trends that you're seeing that might influence the cyber threat intelligence landscape over the next few years?
Yeah. So, I mean, you can't have a conversation without talking about artificial intelligence, right? I mean, it's here, it's a thing. If you're not sure about that, trust me. But it's being used by threat actors, but it's also being used to enhance cyber operations for sure. So that's just going to continue. And hopefully the defensive side can keep up with the offensive side, because it is really hard. Threat actors dream up crazy new stuff every single day. And, most of us as defenders don't necessarily have like that criminal mindset where we're like, oh, maybe they would do this. We kind of have to like react a lot of times. I also see like supply chain attacks are really increasing a lot, and it could be anything from physical, where you saw like the pagers exploding, and I think it was Lebanon, I forget exactly where, to GitHub repos being compromised, or GitHub Actions even being compromised. So that's something that's definitely up and coming, and it's something that we see more of the advanced persistent threat actors doing, because they know like if they go low and slow in something like that, they can gain access potentially to a lot of different organizations.
Understood. Final last question for you, Marcelle. Great interview, by the way. How can viewers connect with you if they have follow-on questions?
Yeah, for sure. So feel free to reach out to me at marcellee.com. That's pretty simple. If you have my name, that's all you need. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn, send me a message or whatever. Always happy to connect. I love helping people with cybersecurity issues. So 100% happy to do that.
Awesome. Well, Marcelle, we're out of time. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your expert insights on cyber threat intelligence.
Jim, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. All right, so that's going to wrap up today's episode. We extend our sincere thanks to Ms. Marcelle Lee for sharing her valuable insights into cyber threat intelligence, adversary tradecraft, and the future of the threat landscape. Her perspective on proactive defense, intelligence sharing, and a little bit on workforce development was both informative and inspiring. For more information about Cybersecurity Today and future episodes, please visit our show's website at www.cybersecuritytoday.org. Additionally, you can scan the QR code displayed at the bottom of your screen for quick and easy access to our show's website. Finally, we welcome your questions or comments via email at contactus@cybersecuritytoday.org. Feel free to reach out to us. We're here to assist and engage with you. That does it for today. Thanks a lot for joining us. We look forward to seeing you at our next broadcast. Stay safe, stay informed. Have a great day.